Well, hello, it's Sheena Douglas again, and what we're going to play with today, well, the clues are there, the stuff you're looking at really. It's combinations. I like to find new combinations, and when you get a new product that you love, like this gorgeous tub of ice from in H2Os from Luminart, and you start experimenting, mixing things up, you just discover some new looks and new things to play with, as we do, because that's what we do as crafters. And I'm going to combine the ice with another product I love, the amazing Spectrum Noir pens. These are the gorgeous new Spectrum Noirs from Crafter's Companion. And the other thing I really I need to stop using and move on now, but I can't, is the craft card. Again, this is the Crafter's Companion craft card. It's a nice, good, thick weight. And really durable, not too dark so it'll take colour and things, so which is fab. Now when they're combined, this is the project that you can make. Just one of the projects, and I really like this one because it's got a few techniques that I'd like to share with you. And I just like the mix again of the shiny with the matte. If you look, hopefully we can get the bling on the poppies there. And also the contrast between the craft card, which is, you know, obviously very earthy, and then even to the opposite extreme, a little bit of complete opposite acetate with the wording on. Again, just mixing up the kind of polar opposites, and this is what we're going to be making now. So let's get to it. Now what I've started is I've started to stamp out this poppy stamp, which is from the Poppies and Daisies, one of my A6 stamps from the Little Bit Sketchy range, and I've mounted onto some one of my clear rocker blocks. If you use acrylic blocks and foam, that's all good as well, but the reason I'm liking this is look at how close I've cut to the stamp. Because I don't have any foam on there, you can do that, and it means I can do things like over stamping, because I can marry up the outside shape even though it's not a clear stamp. We'll do more of that in other tutorials and things and videos. But I've got that ready, stuck with stick and spray, and I've stamped out some images using some Memento. Now because I'm going to colour in with my alcohol pens, I need to use a water-based ink, and Memento is exactly that, it's a water-based ink. So that's all good and fine and dandy. So what I'm doing is, I'll just show you what I'm doing, is if you're new to stamping, always take the ink pad to the stamp, pop your stamp on your desk, because then you can get nice even coverage and pressure, and if you're trying to hold them like this, it's not good. So nice, because it's also a felt ink pad, it's a good one I think for starters, for beginners, because beginners I find tend to press really heavily when you're stamping to start with, and you've got to squeeze the life out of the ink, the stamp, to get an impression. And if you're using a pigment ink, it's always in a foam, so you can actually squidge all the ink out, whereas because this is a solid felt base that the ink's held in, it doesn't tend to do that if you're a little bit heavy-handed when you first start. So notice what I've done is I've staggered the poppies. I've used it virtually the full height, and then I've gone down a little bit. I didn't want it though to look like chevrons. Try to be a little bit random with it, but I'm also sneaky because I've fitted them in so that I didn't have to mask, because if one overlaps the other, that would look quite wrong. So just fit them in the spaces, but keep it irregular, and it looks more natural that way. So this is onto, I don't know if I mentioned, but this is onto a card which is specifically designed to use with your solvent markers, your solvent pens, such as your Spectrum Noirs. And this is the Nina card from Crafter's Companion. So I've cut a square to size. Now we can get to colouring, and why not? So I've picked some colours out. I'm not getting too fancy with the colouring because I don't need to really. It's quite as simple. It's all red. So I've picked 3 shades of red here. I've got, for the darkest, DR7. I have DR3, funny enough, for the mid one, and I have CR8. Now, go figure, they just work. I find they work fine. So let's start off with this lighter tone here. And I love this because, hang on, there you go, my lovely brush nibs. I can't tell you how happy I am that Leanne managed to find the pens that we can have this brush nib in there. Oh, look, straight away Soon as the camera's close up, I went outside the lines. I would be the shame of the playground, wouldn't I, if I was a kid? That's so wrong. But never mind, you could fix that with your blender pen, but you know what? I'm not even going to bother because it's going to look a bit distressed and aged and things anyway. So just nice light pressure when you're colouring. I'm colouring the lighter colour into where the first colour is the lightest colour here I'm using, and that's where the highlights and things are going to touch. And I'm just going to go ahead there. Now you've all got your own different ways to colour, and if you need more instruction on that, Leanne Chivers, my friend from Crafter's Companion, has an amazing video and tutorials on how to do that. So, but I'm just winging it here. So that's that one. And then again, we'll go with the middle colour. But one thing I am doing, and Leanne is really loving as well, is using like a nice feathery kind of movement with this brush nib. And I find it blends one colour into the other really nicely, and it's fab for florals because it can suggest kind of like the you know, the little ridges in the petals, which I really like. So instead of being super smooth, because everything isn't super smooth, you're going to want texture sometimes. I find this can achieve that. So don't worry if you see one colour merging into the other and it's got a little bit of a suggestion of a line. That's great, we can make this brush nib work for you like that. I think that's all wonderful. And actually I'm going to put a little bit of that red on there. I'm going to go over with a bit green as well, but I just want it to look a little bit kind of browny reddy kind of thing. I've missed one at the bottom. I'm not going to do a whole colouring tutorial here. I'm just going to go ahead and colour some, then I'm going to continue, and then we're going to come back to the next stage, just so as you know. Actually I will use that one. I'm going to use the bullet nib for this because I don't want as much of the dark colour, but again I'm just kind of flicking the colour into the darker part of the petals. So underneath, just where they're really, see, and I've already got those lines where the petals on the poppy are really thin. So if you've got the darker colour moving in and you can see lines, it just looks like folds and ridges and ripples. So it looks good, it adds to it. Now I'm not even going to get fancy colouring two colours in with the green. I'm literally just using one green, and it's one of my favourite greens in the whole set, the whole range, Spectrum range, and it's CG4. This one here. Now I'm going to use the fine nib here because these are really fine. And you know, I said I was going to use a bit of green in that red. It'll just make it look a browny colour, but that's good. Right, now you're just going to carry on like that, and it doesn't have to be too fancy schmancy because you know, it's the colouring. It's not, the whole card isn't just about the colouring, it's about the other elements as well. So don't get too critical with yourself with that, but that's looking quite nice there, apart from that little bit which I can fix with my blender pen. Okay, and I'm going to continue colouring those and we'll come back. So they're the coloured in poppies, and now I want to bling them up. The clue's there with what I'm going to use. This is the baby that's going to make all the difference. This is the Grandi jar of ice. You can just see at the bottom there. There you can. The cameraman was shaking his head. So that's the ice jar. Now I love this because it's more, it looks to me when you use it, it's in a clear suspension, so it doesn't add colour at all. All it adds is bling. Now it's not really, it doesn't really look like mica to my mind. It looks more like a if you had a midway point between mica and a fine art glitter, this is what you would get. It looks more glitter. If you look in the tub, you can see it looks like tiny little bits of glitter in there, and you'll be able to see more when I paint it on. So it's kind of a really quick way of adding bling onto anything. Now your alcohol pens aren't blingy, but if you haven't got a whole range of the Luminart, it's not, maybe you're not, bling's not your thing, but you want to dabble a little bit, I would definitely suggest that this is what you go for. So all you want to do, I wet it before I'm going to play like any other jar of H2O, give it a good spray, and then leave it, in fact I'll spray it again, because it will, what it starts to do is just smush up the bottom layers, that never goes completely soft, but just enough for you to use. Leave it 5 minutes and then it's ready to play with. Now I've picked up some on the brush, I'm not painting like it's super glue. I've just got it a nice kind of a thin cream consistency, and I'm just going to go over and paint where I've coloured. I want the background to remain matte because this is what we're talking about here, contrast. This was my plan, my mission. Mix it between the matte and the smooth, the shiny and the rough. And so can you see I'm just going over there, this bit here, I can go over the whole area. Just keep reloading. And what it's doing is it's adding the shine. There's because of the suspension, has got a little bit of a shine to it, but also that lovely chunkier mica that's in there, and it's going to make that really pop out. Now I'm only going to do one, and hopefully you'll be able to see the difference with the others when I pick it up for the camera and do a little jiggy dance, so it'll hopefully hit the bling. Don't worry too much about keeping to the lines too carefully. I think this is really nice. It's if you don't want full on in your face glitter, but you just want a little bit of, you know, bling somewhere, a little bit of reflection, this is just such a fab little jar of wonderful stuff to use for that. Let's see what that looks like. I think I've got everything. I think so. I'm just looking across because sometimes, especially with a bright light, you can't actually see really easily where you've hit. Now, that needs to dry, and it'll be blingier, but hopefully there's enough in there for you to see the one that's been done compared to the others. Can you get that? Yeah? So I'm going to continue. I'm going to colour the rest like that, and then we'll come back again. So that's the ice now over all the poppy, so hopefully you can see where the shine is. I'm hoping you can. Yeah. Can you get that? When it's finished you'll be able to see. Now, that's looking fab. Now the reason that works so well is because the pens are solvent based, so when I go over the top with a water-based product like the H2Os, it doesn't lift the colour, doesn't unsettle it, so it's a perfect marriage. So it doesn't matter how much water-based product you add to the top of that now, it's not going to lift the colour, so score. But it's far too clean, because Nina is bright white, smooth card, and I want to dirty it up a little bit. So this is where I'm going to come in with my good old distress inks, and I'm using antique linen. Try out the colours. I've got brushed corduroy here, I've got frayed burlap, I've got tea dye. All of them are a little bit dark because against that stark white of the Nina they just look too much contrast. I'm going to ink this up now, hopefully you can see that. Now, I should mention what I'm using to distress it. If you're a stamper, you owe it to yourself, and I know it's my design, but I have to say, I think it's a stroke of genius, this little stamp set here. This is called Aging Beautifully, I wish. But it's an absolute, I think a must if you're a stamper, I believe anyway, because I wish I had this years ago, but I had invented it years ago. What I've got on here is I've got just enough of everything you need to age a project beautifully. I've got a strip of text here, it's in Latin, so I couldn't read it, but it's stripped just enough to be able to overstamp and repeat it, so you've literally can have a full page of text if you want. I have a Hessian back patch here, which when you overstamp it, the samples from a design team, they've actually got full sheets of backing card that I've created just with this Hessian patch here. I have corners distress, so if you want to distress outside a sharp line, you've got this one. If you want to distress inside your corner, you've got this one. There's crackle, but there's just enough that you don't need a full sheet and pay for a full sheet of crackle. Because it's got irregular edges, you can overstamp it, make the crackle look smaller. You can, this will do a full sheet of card if you want, and it'll look more natural if you've got a hard cut off edge. There's water splats and there's water drops, so there's tons on there. Oh, and there's even a paper tray. So that's what I'm using, and I'm using the text first of all. So I'm inking it up with some antique linen, and a little tip is I've marked a little arrow on underneath. so I can see that's up the right way of the text. So I'm not going to be stamping wording upside down. Well, not every time anyway. So I'm just going to apply that there, and that's good. I'm not bothered if I've got a little bit where it's stronger than others. That's all good. And then I can go ahead and I'll just come down, continue. If you cut really close to your, for some reason I'm getting a little blip there. I don't know if it's something underneath. Could be something underneath the card. Who knows? Good thing I wanted to stress down. Let's bring it in a little bit. That's that. It's gone a little bit wonky, but that's fine. I can live with that. And then we'll put up a little bit. I just don't want it in a totally straight line. Let's have that about there. And maybe have some in that bottom corner as well, just to kind of balance it, but not too much. I don't want it to be too contrived looking. So that's just enough little suggestion of text and texture in the background. And then we can start doing some other bits and pieces. We can get some water splats and things on there. So I've got these just on some smaller things. Let's do a paper tray. Let's use brushed corduroy. I don't want brushed corduroy or frayed burlap. Yeah, that would do. So I'll stamp that tray, and I'll maybe do a paper tray about there. Or maybe do another one. I'll do it the opposite way at the bottom here. Just down there. I'll maybe have a paper, a spot. There it is, I like this one. This is a good fun one. I don't want it quite as dark, so I'm just going to take some of the ink off onto a little bit of kitchen paper and pop it there. Do another one. Again, I don't want it to look too symmetrical when you're doing this. Try to be as random factor as you can. And then let's do a splat. Let's do that down there as well. Now at the minute they look really, really stark against that background. Oh, look, I'll cover that nicely against that background. But I haven't gone in with my cut and dry foam yet, and that'll blend everything in together. Right, so back to the antique linen, because I want to start lighter and I can always go darker. Now, Nina card is fab for colouring. It's not the best with distressing because it can drag a little bit, but so don't worry if you don't get that perfectly gorgeous vignette look. By the way, can you see what's happening? See that little halo there? That's where the H2O's, the ice is. It's kind of created a repellent little glaze. So when you go over, that's why I coloured it before I used the distressing. It stops the distressing sitting on top of your colour, so you can go straight over it. That looks really pretty cool. So I'm going to go around the outside with this. And you can even drop some water on there as well if you want to age it a little bit more. I don't want to colour the whole thing, I just want to have it darker at the corner. I might want to go in with a little bit of a darker shade, which we may well do. But see how that's really aging that now. It's looking much better, much happier, but you've got that glow in the middle. I wanted that to just really look like it's nice and bright in the centre. I'll use a little bit of this brushed corduroy, why not? Now also there's those corners as well, you know, there's distressed corners. You could use them in the corner if you wanted. This is looking quite nice. So now, because I put the text on and then I inked over it, the text is just kind of appearing in parts of the image. It's not looking as, you know, sticking out as like a sore thumb like it was. So, I think that looks pretty good. I am happy with that. Look at the difference and see the combination again of mixing the products that you've got there that you might not have thought to mix together. Now I'm going to show you how I finished the card. So hopefully you enjoyed that little bit there. That's really the main stuff I wanted to show you. To finish the card, first of all, the base card, I've used some of the craft card from, again, Crafter's Companion craft card, and what I've done is one of the panels I cut, as I'm busy doing this, it hasn't been trimmed, I've actually stamped with another distressing, used water to blend it, but can you see how I've got this one blingy? Can you see that? Maybe, it's definitely blingy from where I am. I'm getting a kind of a maybe look from the go for the cameraman. Yeah, you got it there? That's the ice again over the top, so even just with the watercolour effect with your distressings looks well cool. So another little thing I wanted to mention. But to put the card together, if you look at this, that's the background there. As you can see, that one I've just shown you. Mounted onto some black card, and I've used a black mat again to mount the centre panel, but I've also stamped this squeet in here from another one of my stamp sets, and onto acetate and cut it, and just attached it with little mini brads. I think that just looks a little bit funkier than just stamping it on there, and again it's all about the contrast. I've used for the brackets another stamp set of mine called Wrought Iron, and this is one of the corners there. It's the one I've used, and I've just used black embossing powder. So before you stick it all together, be sure you use your anti-static bag before you stamp and you emboss onto that panel. We want to keep it nice and clean. So heat emboss the corners, and I've used a little a Tim Holtz little ticket here with a pin in it, and just to finish it off. And I think that looks really rather cool. Really nice card. And now, if you want to see more samples, galleries and things, if you go to Sheena.tv, that's where you'll find the galleries, you'll find dates for television shows, you'll find links to where to get the products, you'll find workshop information that's coming up. So anything that is moi, it'll be found at Sheena.tv, Facebook links, etc. Thank you very much. See you next time.